Do you know what's weird? You spend ages waiting for a single game to finally release, and then the moment it does, suddenly it seems like there's a million very similar titles all competing for your attention. I was really excited for Dead as Disco to come out, and then boom, suddenly Waxheads and Mixtape come out, and wouldn't you know it, now everybody's making a music game. I, like everyone else, was really excited for Subnautica 2's early access, and then Romestead, Outbound and Space Haven all come in with their takes on survival stuff. And the less said about games set in a megastructure, the better. No idea why they're so popular all of a sudden, maybe a bunch of people read blame, who knows. Anyway, my point is that even if you restrict your focus to just a handful of genres, and if you ignore all the high budget stuff coming out lately, which is pretty hard to do because the James Bond game is great, then it can be really hard to filter through everything to find out which games are worth playing. Thankfully, that's why I'm here. Each and every month I go through the last 30-ish days of games and pick out just 5 from the ever-growing pile that I think deserve more attention than they've been getting. These games aren't the biggest or the highest profile ones around, but they are the weirdest, most interesting and coolest games that I could find from May of 2026 that you should have played, but that you probably haven't. And if I'm not being helpful enough already, I'll even showcase the best price I can find for them and whether they have a demo in the corner up there. So really, let's be honest, you've got no excuse but to check them out. Right, let's get started with Motor Slice, which is a game that, I'll be honest, doesn't contain that many motors or even that much slicing. A better name might be Anime Girl Chainsaw Platforming, and it's kind of like Prince of Persia the game, but admittedly, that's not quite as catchy. Basically, the entire game is one long platforming gauntlet up this giant concrete and metal megastructure. Yes, another one of those. And what I really like about Motor Slice's pacing is that while it absolutely does have a bunch of really hyped moments, like its Shadow of the Colossus style boss fights against big construction vehicles, and the segments where you get to chainsaw grind across massive gaps, most of the game is actually quite slow and strategic as you plan out your parkour routes before invariably getting it wrong and flinging yourself into a big crusher. It's a really unique feeling game in the face of every other super hard, ultra intense platformer out there, and as a result, it's a perfect chill out and listen to an audiobook sort of game. Just, speaking of reading, maybe skip the dialogue and the cutscenes, which are, basically all like this. Next up, we've got Moon Sigil Atlas, a deck-building roguelike. Wait, this one's not like all the others. Rather than being a straightforward rip-off of Slay the Spire, Moon Sigil is built around a pretty damn cool gimmick. Rather than having casting costs, you play your spells in the form of tiles on this board, and it turns every fight into this really cool spatial reasoning puzzle where you've got to account for stuff like your block sigils only working on certain sections, or the best sigils having really weird shapes, and enemies constantly screwing with the board. Moon Sigil Atlas even fixes my biggest issue with deck builders in general, that they all eventually devolve into infinite combo machines by having a finite space for your stuff, so you've actually got to be efficient instead. Couple all those cool ideas with some really good balance fundamentals and some fun archetype design that makes the most of the mechanics, then you've got a game that bucks the trend in some cool ways, but still feels very familiar. If somehow you're bored with Slay the Spire 2, then for sure, pick this one up. After that, we've got Vultures, Scavengers of Death, which is a glimpse into an alternate timeline where Resident Evil was a turn-based tactics game. And what really impressed me about this one is how well it adapts the survival horror tension into a totally different format. It's got everything from the risk of going for a headshot, to the great stealth rhythm of methodically trying to take out individual enemies as safely as you can, to everybody's favourite, cool knife tricks. But it's the stuff that Vultures takes from the other side of its genealogy that really sets it apart. It's got all sorts of cool dungeon crawler tactics you need to keep in mind, like battlefield warping elemental effects, and some really cool enemy designs like this big guy and this creepy fella that wouldn't be practical in a more action-focused game, but work great here. Vultures Scavengers of Death is a concept so good I'm amazed no one's done it before. Pick it up. Now, when I first purchased The Adventures of Sir Kix-a-Lot, I've got to say, I wasn't expecting a lot. But I was amazed to find not just a reimagining of one of the best hidden gem games ever, Heroes of Might and Magic Dark Messiah, but also one of the funniest titles of the year. Sir Kix-a-Lot is an immersive sim that's basically an exercise in weaponized slapstick. Every fight invariably turns into this stumbling comedy scrap where you're constantly slipping on banana peels, chopping off limbs, and of course, kicking enemies into the sea. And the game has a surprisingly massive variety of contexts and mechanics for you to play with. A particular favourite of which being enchanting a fish with lightning, lobbing it at someone to stun them, and then kicking them into spikes. Sir Kix-a-Lot has great gags, strong level design, and some surprisingly deep combat. Pick it up, and then it's time to kick things off. Does that work? Does that make sense? Whatever. And finally, the best game from May 2026 that you should have played is Panthalassa, a game inspired by the golden age of point and clicks and the horrendous yet amazing UI design of old school computer programs. The basic premise is that you play as Magellan, a survey AI who crashes into a mysterious underwater research facility and through a series of digital mishaps ends up uploaded into a weird robotic body and tasked with figuring out what happened, whilst also researching a bunch of fish. And it's the way you do all this that is by far the best part of the game, because Panthalassa is mostly comprised of weird alien computer interfaces that you need to puzzle out the meaning of in order to crack a bunch of codes. There's this one that involves figuring out some weird colours and signals, there's this giant weird slot machine, and there's even this especially weird one that involves farting out a bunch of different colour fluids into the ocean, which ties into this whole hidden language of ciphers and keys, which, no, I won't explain, because being totally baffled and then gradually mastering these weird digital worlds is all part of the fun. Panthalassa as a whole is a love letter to the Bronze Age of computing and also to oceanography, two disparate disciplines united by the sense that there's always some hidden, obscure depths left to explore if you're willing to look hard enough. And this is also something that's reflected in the story, which starts out quite silly and lighthearted, but that gradually unveils a really interesting and incredibly existential look at purpose, consciousness, and memory that completely threw me off guard, given that this is also a game that spends a bunch of its runtime cracking fish jokes. There is nothing quite like Panthalassa. Please do give it a go. This video was brought to you by the Architect of Games supporters. These fine people are the ones who make sure that this video reached your eyeballs, ears, and other miscellaneous sensory organs, and they're also the people who make sure that this channel keeps running when I get a cough and can't record audio and everything gets bottlenecked for like a week. Of course, my supporters aren't just acting out of the kindness of their hearts, they also get a couple of bonuses as a thank you from me. Architect of Games supporters get early access to videos, behind the scenes stuff, an extra 3 whole games they should have played every single month, and their name in the credits. Look at those little goobers, look at them go, wow. Of course, my top tier supporters also get a special voiced shout out, as you really ought to know by now. And those people are Ali Wright, Andrew Lebrano, Auna94, Baroness Caroline, Bobby, Constantine Amend, Cosmix360, Daniel Metjes, Daniel Ursin, Dirk Jan Karrenbeld, Digleteer, Dis Ellie, Ecton, Edward Franklin Woods, Edwina the Space Bun, Eric Walston, Eugene Bulkin, Fuck It's Job, Fulibaxi, Gazkul, How, Heck It's Noah, I Support Trans Rights, I'm So Glad You Weren't Eaten, Jacob Dylan Riddle, Jinkaloid, Kevin Help Us, Konolov, Kangi, Leap Year Every Day, Luke Kokoran, Macewinder54, Mark Vallant, Mika Oi, Michael C., Mike Oxlong, Nate Graff, Oliver Marhofer, Patrick Romberg, Peter Tomasic, Reddedex, Regal Regex, Seslux, Silver Folfy, Toak, maybe, I don't know, Tyler Duncan, Timoteus Beksek, Whimsical Wisp, Zach Brandmeier, and Ciao. Okay, that's me done for now. I'll see you again in probably just over a week. Bye!